from inert Orientalist associations of the faraway, sensuous, exotic, unchanging, paradisical, and seasonless, to the overt colonial constructions of the plantation, indolence, jungly, native, savage, and bountiful, the term tropical has become fraught with such stale remarks that it continues to perplex the best of minds. Its ability to shapeshift for colonialism, nationalism, and capitalism means that it has been prone to bewildering uses.
In the 1920s, the Filipino artist Victoria Edades traveled to New York to meet with the Mexican painter Diego Rivera to talk about muralism.
And how they were going to kind of paint the revolutions that were happening in Mexico and the Philippines. And what connected them was the story and the experience of the colonial and the insults of colonialism. And they said that they would now speak for their people and those around them.
We never quite figured out whether or not that meeting ever happened. But really what was more important for us was the ambition for solidarities that could be forged, real or imagined.
And thereafter we began to kind of look for connections between Southeast Asia and Latin America.
Thinking about the kind of connections and resonances was a very important way in which we would suggest that these solidarities sometimes didn't necessarily arise from artists meeting, but having also these shared spirit of experimentation and interest in pushing the boundaries of what art could be.
By the 1920s, the paintings of the French artist Paul Gauguin have begun to circulate. And as these pictures and these paintings begin to circulate, a certain image of his Tahitian subjects is constructed. And as a result, an entire myth is born. And by the 1920s, large groups of artists in Latin America, Southeast Asia, are beginning to question this picture. Is it truly a picture that is a sufficient representation?
Madame Pollock, pour vous, Bali, c'est le paradis des vacances?
Non, parce que j'ai né ici.
Vous êtes balinaise, Madame Pollock?
Oui, je suis balinaise.
Où êtes-vous née?
Près de Denpasar.
The Library of the Tropics is a special zone within the exhibition's narrative, which brings together an intriguing collection of books, cultural objects, artworks, maps, posters, which have been kind of put together by the curatorium over the past 5 to 6 years. And for its first iteration, we are presenting the story of two islands, Bali and Tahiti. Two islands that have an intriguing place within the story of 20th century modern art, but also are very important sites for mass tourism today. And so both the islands are seen as allegorical twins.
The first gallery is called The Myth of the Lazy Native. The title is borrowed from a 1977 book published right here in Singapore by the sociologist and public intellectual Syed Hussain Alatas. It lays out the groundwork for questioning this construction of indolence. Often indolence was used as a technique largely in colonies that were tropical to kind of highlight that they were in need of colonization and industrialization. But for some reason, those that were living in these climates were unable to embrace industrialization and modernization.
And really, when we look at the works in the first space, we really see everyday life, everyday folk, the harvest, tropical fruits, but also labor, that intensity and also that intentionality.
In 1981, Sunayo woke up one day hearing that
one of his students at the Institute of Technology Bandung, ITB, had taken his work torso and set it afire. The student's name is Samsa Siahan. From Samsa's point of view, he felt that that was an appropriation. He later retitled the artwork as Ole Ole Dari Desa No. 2, which translates to Slovenia from the village Part 2, in the idea that if Sunario can appropriate the image of a Papuan motive, so can he.
And now I stand with my art before you, dear inhabitants of this beautiful garden. I am fully aware of your view that new and fresh creations in contemporary art can only be achieved by having total individual freedom. I agree. But I would like to ask, do you deserve to utter that credo from the parasitic shell of your beautiful garden that rests in the middle of such a large expanse? Aren't you aware that before you talk about beauty, you and I have a moral obligation to liberate ourselves and the struggling masses residing at the gates of our beautiful garden?
Gallery B is titled This Earth of Mankind. It starts out with questioning, like in the title itself, this shared humanity that happens between artists from Latin America and Southeast Asia. We start to look at the development of self-portraiture that is being used. So here, within the self-portraiture, we start looking at the iconography that shifts. What does it mean to define yourself in the period of decolonization that happens? There is this moment where techniques, formal techniques, starts changing the vernacular in terms of material that are being used, in terms of iconography that's happening. You will see the indigenous and the endogenous knowledges becoming more and more prevalent.
Before we talk about the constellations in the gallery, I think the very important touchstone is really the title of Gallery C, which is The Subversive. And this is taken, of course, from Jose Rizal's novel El Filibusterismo, which was published in 1891 and follows, the movement and kind of mutative potential of its main protagonist, Simone, who is really Cristosmo Ibarra, returned as someone who shapeshifts through multiple identities and is able to then catalyze, the downfall of colonial power during his time in Manila. Gallery C really focuses on 15 propositions by artists who are operating across Southeast Asia and Latin America from the 1960s onwards. And what we wanted to explore across this range of artists was the way that they saw practice as a form of limitless kind of investigation of ideas that tapped on both seen and unseen knowledge systems, those that were embedded already within the project of modern art and those that also fell outside of it. Looking through this spirit of the subversive, one of the very kind of interesting figures that we spotlight in the exhibition is the Thai artist Montian Bunma. It was actually in the environs of Chiang Mai that he began to pay a special attention to the way that the rapid kind of mechanization and industrialization of agrarian labor was phasing out, the tools and ways of life of farmers in Thailand.
There is something quite incredible that begins to happen in the 1950s. Artists in Southeast Asia and Latin America are starting to say that they want to become the vanguards of modern art. They could not only paint, write, and speak like their colonizers, they could also paint, write, and speak just like themselves. And as a result, they held the possibility of entertaining two ideas and two thoughts at the same time. Almost like as if you're watching two films at the same time. And this double vision is incredible because we've found ways to adapt it and think about it when we relate to each and every artwork that is presented in this exhibition.
Kalau kau mahu, ada langit biru yang lain birunya, ada awan putih yang lain putihnya, ada cara lain merenung purnama, matahari ungu di musim kelima, pagi yang lain sinarnya, malam yang lebih pekat hitamnya. Pejamkan matamu sebentar. Di sini kita bernapas tanpa kalendar. Ingat tangis pertama disertai ketawa, manisnya, pedihnya bila mulut dibuka. Akan kukirim seekor rama-rama dari desa yang tak pernah ditimpa cahaya, atau segenggam kapur biru dari gua digali dengan kuku dan lagu. Sungguh akan kukirim padamu kalau kau mau. Sebuah perahu tanpa nomor dan waktu. Naiklah teman-teman tak beribu. Ada pulau biru